All right, so welcome everyone to the second part of the health pillar within residential green building and remodeling. This course is brought to you by the GreenHome Institute. We're a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the places we live. Make sure you recognize that you can get your non-specific LEED Green Associate Hour for this course, among many other CEUs, including AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety, which may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. So we're going to dive right back into it. And again, we left off talking about health, and we just recently wrapped up talking about filtration, filtering the inevitable pollutants that will occur in your home from off-gassing or from the things that you do in your home that or that your clients do in their home that you can't control, right? There's things that are just out of your control that are going to happen that you need to design and be ready for, either because it's a code requirement or because you're getting a green certification or because it's just frankly the right thing to do, and it will help you upsell your projects. So there are four types of ventilation, and that excludes opening the window. So really there's 5 types, but 4 types of active ventilation. And there's supply or exhaust, which are really one type, but we're going to break them down. Then there's balanced, then there's energy recovery, and then there's smart. And some of these can work together. And so you can see, most importantly, that you are going to be looking at the ASHRAE 62.1 standard for non-residential space. And so typically most programs are now referencing 2010 for that. But this is important for common area space and commercial space. This is just a bare minimum threshold on what you need to do for ventilating those spaces. 62.2 is what is referred to as residential. And so those of you working in the multifamily space with your engineers and your architects, we still have engineers and architects like, what is 62.2? So they need to get educated. So 2010 kicks in LEED v4, then there's 2013, then there's 2016, which kicks in LEED v4.1, and then there is 2019 as well. And then, ASHRAE continues to, have further standards beyond that. And so what I want to do is get into a quick calculator just to show you. This is the red calc. It's pretty cool. And so you can quickly go into a new or existing project, determine if it's new or existing. You'll get some different things. Determine whether it's attached or so townhomes, multifamily homes, or a detached single family home. Now, the infiltration credit is important. It's an interesting credit because basically what it means under the 2016 ASHRAE program, which again, most of the LEED v4.1, most of the other agencies are recognizing 2016 now, is that you're basically, in some ways, unfortunately, if you think back to our energy pillar, you're basically getting a reward for building a leakier home, right? And so we understand these things happen. You can't, but if there is a situation where a home, either, and especially in existing housing where you can only tighten it up so much, you can recognize the infiltration that comes in through the walls, which again is not a healthy situation, right? But you can recognize that to appropriately ventilate and hit these standards. So the way this is, the way that this is set up, you can see I've got a project we were looking at right now in Ann Arbor. We were looking at the square footage of the house, how many occupants, which is bedrooms plus 1. We were looking at the dwelling height, so how tall it is. And we were estimating how leaky it would be at final construction. Or if it's an existing home, you can do a blower door test and you can know, why guess when you can know is what our motto is. And then you get all this data back here, but basically, if this home was going straight 2016, and I'll show you on a chart here in a second, you would be, I'm wondering if all of you can even see my screen right now. I'm betting that you probably can't, as I'm thinking about this now. So forgive me. But let's try to see if we can Can you, all of you see the, okay, you can, all right. So anyway, just being safe there. So basically, you know, this would be a home that would require 200 CFM if it was following the ASHRAE 2016 pathway. But because of it being leaky, which this isn't leaky, this is pretty tight, 650 CFM, they only need 145 of continuous or intermittent ventilation. So again, this isn't a technical course. We're going to do another session with these folks on ASHRAE 62.2 for you all, and there's a lot of great resources out there from ASHRAE. But this is just an example of a resource you can use to make informed decisions for your clients to help them hit these standards to make sure they've got the proper ventilation, no matter whether they're using supply, exhaust, balanced, intermittent, smart, ERV, or you name it. So on the next slide here, when we go to move over, you're going to see this again. This is a ventilation calculation on basically the conditioned square foot, and then the bedrooms, or bedrooms are otherwise defined as, occupants are bedrooms plus one. And so this is what you would want to use as your starting point. But again, if you've got a leakier older home, this might be overventilating, though we're finding the ASHRAE standard in many cases overventilates in certain situations and underventilates in others. And that's what we're going to get to in a little bit here and cover why that is occurring and what you can do about it if you want to be a little smarter. So first, we're looking at the exhaust only strategy, and this is really more used in cold weather climate states specifically. And so this strategy, you can see the half sun there is gaining an energy penalty, right? You're going to lose energy. You're going to have higher energy bills. You're going to have worse energy ratings simply for ventilating. So again, when we talk about green building, there's always trade-offs, but you don't want to, poison your clients. You want them to have a healthier home and a healthier space. So the trade-off, in my opinion, is worth it, but this is one of the worst ways to ventilate, and it's going to have a high energy penalty in your energy models and everything else. So you're going to simply be using that bath fan to move that air out. You're going to want the fan to be tested by a third-party energy rater, as we talked about, hit a 50 CFM for LEED and other programs at your base minimums when it gets turned on, and then set up, some sort of intermittent exhaust controls so that the fan, when it's turned off, is still running and adequately ventilating the space. So here's some resources from our friends, and I'm at PNNL, on how to do this, how to set these up, how to install them properly. We see all sorts of terrible installs on bath fans where they fail. So you might want to consider oversizing your bath fan, using something like the Panasonic Whisper Green, which is a fantastic product, and putting in a 110 CFM system in there, just to make sure you get enough pull when inevitably the system is not properly installed because it doesn't have a straight run like this, right? We see it all the time. Unless you're doing a straight run out like this, you're going to have issues. And even then, we see a lot of issues where it's blocked or trash gets thrown in. So you want to make sure it's third-party tested, as we talked about. The next strategy here, and that's a little blurry for some reason, but is the supply-only strategy. And so this is, used in more of the warmer states, but it is used in cold weather. I mean, both of these strategies are used all over the country. This is typically used in the warmer states. You basically have your return register sucking in air from the outside, going through the furnace or the conditioning or the heat pump, and then coming out through the supplies. And so this is going to put a positive pressure on the house, which in some cases, there's some theories that positive pressure is good, that it keeps radon down. I haven't seen enough evidence to prove that it really does that, but there are theories out there. And so the bath fans are causing the negative pressure, which sounds bad, but this is causing a positive pressure. And so again, you're going to have it set up. You're going to have a switch on there. So when the furnace kicks on, it's not just supplying air then, but it's also supplying fresh air when the furnace is off, either at an intermittent pace or a continuous pace. And then you might use something like a booster fan, like Panasonic's Whisper Supply, So it's, you know, got a timer on it, it's got the proper settings on it, and it's going to bring in enough outdoor air. And again, not just rely on that furnace runtime, but you can have those settings to meet your ASHRAE standards or your client's ventilation standards or your code standards. And then moving on from supply or exhaust and looking at the more ideal situation is the balanced ventilation. And there's a couple different ways to do balanced. And again, even with balance, you're going to have an energy penalty. Anytime you're moving air in, moving air out, it's not conditioned, you're going to have that energy penalty, and it's going to hurt your score and it's going to increase your client's utility bills. But again, is it worth it? So here's an example of two different of a sort of a balance strategy that you could connect through smart ventilation, which we'll talk about, or as a standalone. You can have, again, that supply coming in through the furnace or the heat pump, and then you can have the bath fans, as you can see here, doing the appropriate exhaust. And you want to make sure that they're equal. Unless you're trying to get a little bit of a positive pressure, then you might have more CFM coming in from outside versus exhausting. And then, of course, you have your kitchen range hood, which would be a standalone system for exhaust, which we talked about in the last session. Now, moving on to the more advanced section, this is what is called the energy recovery ventilator or the heat recovery ventilator, ERV or HRV. Now, I'm not going to get into the difference between the two. We're going to do a session on that. And there's lots of great sessions on which one you want to use. There has been a lot of myths that ERVs cause moisture issues and all this, and so those don't seem to be true. But what basically here is happening is you're still going to get an energy penalty with a device like this, but it's going to be a lot less because inside of this device, it's capturing the wasted energy. So in the wintertime, it's taking that heat that you're blowing out for your client's home, and it's capturing somewhere between 70 to 99% of that heat. And in the summertime, vice versa, when you're blowing out that cool air, it's reconditioning that air. So in this system itself, you know, there's air coming in, air going out, and it's going through some sort of medium. It's going through a filter, most likely, ideally MERV 16, especially with all these wildfires happening. You want to make sure you're filtering that air. So there's a lot of different systems out on the market. There's a lot of companies now making 200 CFM systems, which in the past they limited them at 100. But that's important because, you know, bigger homes, larger homes, and the fact that we're realizing we need to ventilate our spaces, especially now, it's a matter of life or death. We need to get more ventilation flowing. So these larger systems are coming out. There's 300 ones for commercial grade. And, you know, this is a picture of my IntelliBalance from Panasonic. And it's, what I like about this is it's a cold weather climate one. So I know it's going to work better as that temperature plummets in the cold weather climate states. A lot of the ERVs are not rated to work in the cold. And I had one personally in a former house that just seized right up. And that could potentially lead to some damage. So if you're in cold weather climate states, look for the cold weather climate energy recovery ventilators or heat recovery ventilators. So again, here's how they work. It's kind of just like that balanced one I showed you, but in this case, it's an interconnected system. And there may or may not be standalone bath fans, right? So you may want to tie the ERV into the bath fans and get rid of the bath fans. That's going to increase your energy efficiency. As you can see, we've got the little energy logo up here. So again, you're going to have a much more energy efficient system. It's still going to get a penalty anytime you're moving in air, but it's not going to be as bad. Kitchen ranges can be ventilated through the ERV, or you can use the ERV to supply that fresh air to the kitchen in lack of a range. But we find in practice that it doesn't work out so well to eliminate high pollution or burned food events. But it can be done, and many codes do allow it. And then there's issues with grease getting caught in the ERV too. So you have to have a special filters for all that. So that's just really up to your project and you know what you want to do. If you want to have standalone kitchen ranges and a standalone bath fans for your energy recovery ventilators or heat recovery ventilators. So again, I actually did the red calc thing a little too early, but that's okay. So as I was mentioning, all of these different things, you're going to be calculating them in some sort of program, whether it be REMRate or ASHRAE with your engineer, or on the back of a napkin. We've got some resources you can use through Excel worksheets and you name it, but you want to do these calculations and you want to do them early in the design phase. And you want to make sure you're probably oversizing your units just to make up for bad installations, is which we see all the time. So here's an awesome video we did, and you can check it out on our YouTube, where if you have situations with high humidity, sometimes ERVs can cause problems. And so having certain, there are now dehumidification ventilation systems. So check this webinar out about some of these dehumidification ventilation systems that will properly ventilate the house and dehumidify it at the same time. Pretty cool stuff, and can be very important if you're experiencing high humidity issues as well. Now, the future is smart. So imagine that you have devices strategically located throughout the house. And we talked about some of these in the last session. But instead of the device just telling your clients the really bad news about how terrible their home is, right? What do? I just get this bad news now. Now, let's imagine that device is connected to a ventilation system and talking to it. And it's saying, look, we're going to kick a bath fan on here, or a range hood on here, or the ERV on here, and we're going to ventilate this space when we detect a pollution event, whether it's a cooking event from PM 2.5, VOCs from, gosh, perfume is awful, right? And cologne, it spikes those things up high, nasty stuff. Or whether it's CO2 because you're having a party, you name it. So it's detecting that. And so this is awesome. This is the Panasonic Cosmos system. There's a lot of other systems out there on the market now. Smart systems are coming online every day. And so they're communicating through some sort of device through your phone, where you can control, have user control, and have artificial intelligence, again, detecting that air quality in your client's home and making informed decisions to vent immediately when a problem occurs, so you don't have to rely on you running to your phone and turning it on and all that. So and to take it one step further, now you have what we call into some degree magic boxes, right? So imagine something that can heat, cool, ventilate, and potentially even dehumidify or humidify in the future, all in one device. And we're getting closer and closer to that world. This particular device is our friends over at Build Equinox with the Serve and now Serve 2. And so what happens here is one of these is an energy recovery ventilator, and the other one is a heat pump. And what the heat pump does is it basically conditions the air 100% so that there is no loss of energy when the house is being ventilated in the cold or warm times of the season. And there's many products out there like this. And so you're getting that. And then also what the Serve does to the next level on the smart side, again, is it has this ability to detect VOCs and CO2, and it'll recirculate the air in the house through a high MERV filtration system. And then when a pollution event is detected based on the settings that the client and the owner sets it at, it'll ramp up to exhaust. So it's only heating, it's only ventilating when needed. And it's using the heat pump, which can then also add some conditioning. And so I have a mini split up here because we've seen some projects, even in the cold climates, use strategically placed mini splits to work with these smart ventilation ERV systems to basically distribute preconditioned air through the heat pump, and then use the mini split to just condition it the rest of the way. And then you get the mini splits themselves don't have great filtration, so you get the filtration and the ventilation from this, and then you get that. And then in many cases, and we're going to talk about it at our Net Zero conference on the 29th of September, there are now devices for smaller multifamily projects that will basically, like I said, heat, cool, ventilate all in one little box. And that's all you need in that multifamily unit space that's built to, you know, passive house type standards that we talked about in the energy session. So pretty interesting stuff coming down the line. And there is a link that I provided you to a home that we toured, a GreenStar Gold certified home we toured in Chicago that is using just these strategies I'm talking about here. And they kind of, the owner of the home, who's not an architect or a builder, goes through what they like about this system and how they work and operate it. So you can check that out on our YouTube channel. So that is our ventilation section. I'd like to hear your thoughts or feedback or questions, you know, on what questions do you have about ventilation that I didn't answer, or what kind of ventilation strategies do you like that I didn't cover here? There are energy recovery ventilators now that you can check out, and you can, you know, send me a chat if you want me to tell you where, but they're these small little ones, and it's pretty cool because you can put one in one end of the house and one on the other end of the house, and you can even punch them right into existing homes or multifamily buildings, and they communicate with each other. And what they do is they switch between supply and intake and exhaust, intake and exhaust, intake and exhaust. And so even setting that cool feature aside, what you have are these tiny little ERVs that are blowing in just enough air on one side, exhausting it out on the other, and then boom, they switch when they need to, just to get that, you know, air flowing in and out. So I haven't seen a project use it, but we are seeing it on like Northeastern passive house projects where I hear about it a lot. And I think it's a cool concept that I hope to hear more about that can work with existing homes. So we'll have to look into natural ventilation for net zero. So yeah, you know, depending on your climate, that might be a great idea. So, and then there's a comment: ERVs for bath fans seem not good. I guess I'd love to see some reason why you say that. I always like to understand why, other than just a comment. So I appreciate the comment, but it, you know, from my experience, it does seem to be a great solution, but there's always subjectivity based on your client and where you're building and all that. So I'd love to see more. So I do want to move on from this to make sure we can get through health today. It looks like we may not even get to materials today, but I want to make sure we get through health, and then I'll circle back to some of these other questions that can that come in as well. So air quality, especially with COVID-19 and especially with Delta, dominates the conversation when it comes to health, especially now. You know, we were just starting to have other conversations, and then COVID came about, and here we are again back at air quality, which is good because clearly there's a lot of misunderstanding that, first of all, COVID-19 is airborne and we need to fix our ventilation systems for that and for everything. But there are other health issues out there, believe it or not, besides air quality, that we cannot let this pandemic, you know, make us forget about, and we have to keep looking into. And one of these health issues that goes hand in hand with air quality and energy efficient systems is sound. And so basically you have things called decibels and zones. And we talked a little bit about in the last session about, you know, taking a look at how to assess homes for sound quality, whether it be interior or exterior. But now you want to be looking at the ratings on your dryers, your clothes washers, your dishwashers, especially your dishwashers if you've got an open floor plan. And you want to look at your HVAC systems, and you want to look at your bath fan, and especially in tighter, smaller units, you want to look at the sound ratings, because, you know, inside anything above 45 in living areas and above 35 in sleeping areas can harm our quality of life. It's not going to make us go deaf, but it will harm our quality of life. And so making sure you've got appropriate systems that aren't harming your client's quality of life, that they've got lower ratings on them, whether they be DBA for appliances or CEUS for bath fans, are very important things to look at. The Energy Star program calls out some of the CEUS, the LEED and GreenStar program call out some of the different ratings on just sound testing within bedrooms and bathrooms and living spaces. So it's very important and very easy to do if you just think about it. And a lot of times, the more energy efficient equipment it is, the more right-sized the HVAC is, the more properly designed it is. I've seen range hoods get poorly installed and then they go way above their DBA rating. And so that's problematic too on the install side. But you want to make sure that you've got, that you're thinking through sound. And then the other area of sound, of course, is outdoor, especially in urban areas where you've got a lot of traffic. You want to make sure, again, back to air sealing and insulation, this is a win-win for sound health, because if you can stop the outdoor sound from ruining the quality of life inside, you know, there's a benefit there for health and air quality. And so other areas are now called electromagnetic EMRs, electromagnetic radiation. It used to be EMF, now the term is EMRs. Now, this is a bit of tinfoil hat stuff here, but here's the deal. Think about if you've ever heard of the term, the precautionary principle. And the precautionary principle is to kind of, until there's enough evidence, assume that something could be bad and to use precaution against it just in case. So what we know is there's a lot more data and research in Europe on this, and there's a lot of things going on there. But we have a whole session, a pretty popular session on reducing EMRs during new construction or renovation. And they're just basic things that, okay, you know, just tell me that if you just do it, you know, potentially you could help somebody have better sleep quality, reduce their headaches. Or if somebody does have an actual EMR condition, which I believe is now diagnosed in Europe, not quite yet in the US, then you could help them, right? We have people who have to leave their homes due to EMRs for whatever reasons. So there's lots of different things, like keeping, you know, keeping an electronic kill switch that will kill power in the bedroom for when you're sleeping. So there's not even running, the power is not running through the outlets, right? That can save energy too. Or keeping refrigerators and motors and halogenated lightings away from sleeping areas, keeping smart Wi-Fi away from sleeping areas, and keeping solar equipment away from sleeping areas. And then also shielding homes from Wi-Fi or 5G, or if people are having homes near a large tower. So again, some of it's crazy stuff, I get it, but these are some simple strategies you can use. So we have a website there, and then our friends at the Building Biology Institute, we're hoping to do a webinar. They have a whole checklist on new construction and renovation that you can use. Just, you know, you might find it's just easy stuff you can implement, and it can help out. Now there is, I got the health logo up here because unfortunately there are trade-offs within health, right? And so a lot of the EMF folks have a different message than electrification. And so we're trying to figure out, is there a balance there? Because they would like people to use more gas-fired things to, you know, to cook food, to heat, because of the electrical EMF radiation issues. So of course, the trade-off there is then pitting potential EMR exposure to dangerous air pollution, indoor air pollution. So there is that potential tension that you have to enter into when you're looking at these things. Just something to consider. Being here in Michigan, I hate to say it, but we are the canary in the coal mine for water. We've got Flint poisoning children with lead due to negligence and incompetence in our state. We've got PFAS in our water, in our rain now, all over the state. We've got high water bills, you know, all of that. And I say canary in the coal mine because this is happening all over the country. It just happened to get the spotlight in Flint, and then the PFAS issues on the other side of the state. It's huge. So you got, when you're working with your clients and you're talking about health, water quality is going to come up. And what strategies can you use when you're doing the plumbing system to ensure proper water quality. And there are trade-offs. So, you might have reverse osmosis systems that waste water, right? And they might use energy, you might use electricity. So these are all conversations to have, but you might want to be looking at doing water quality testing. If you're in city water, you might want to look at chlorine and fluoride removal, which can potentially be dangerous. We don't know yet. It's just, you want to find out. You might want to look at UV filtration to get rid of bacteria. Look at micron filters, 5 or 10 microns. And then ultimately looking at reverse osmosis systems and looking at certain water softener types. And again, there are systems that don't use any electricity. I have one. There are systems that waste less water. So looking at those and making sure that, yes, there are the trade-offs on energy and water, but it is, we're having more and more problems with boil water advisories, water health issues, groundwater pollution issues, you name it. And we're going to talk in the next session about rainwater catchment and how that might be, in some ways, a healthier option, not just a water efficiency or sustainable sites option. We can't forget mental health in the design of our homes and our buildings. Mental health is a huge problem that has been neglected since the pandemic. And believe it or not, we can use design to help alleviate some of the strain and stress that we're all experiencing from a mental standpoint. And so really what this boils down to in one aspect is called biophilic design. So humans have an affinity, we evolved with nature. And so we love nature and we connect with it on really deep levels that we still don't quite understand yet. And what we do know is that there are design elements that can be implemented, especially in new construction or even renovations, that can help with our connection with nature and help with our mental health issues. So first, of course, is just bringing light into a space. Right, and just getting as much natural light in as we can, not using artificial light, and staying on the rhythms of the sun for sleeping. And so again, I've got the energy pattern up here because again, natural light can reduce our energy waste. It can also help with passive solar, which you can refer back to the energy pillar on the passive solar. You also have just natural shapes and natural looks, so you can use these natural based patterns when you're designing interior designs. Again, just having more of these elements that you find in nature in whatever application you're using in a house or a building to help. And having access to views of nature is very important. And so that also, I've got the place logo up there because again, having natural spaces helps capture carbon dioxide, puts it in the ground, and it also helps nature in general thrive if you've got certain designs. But it helps us humans if we are working in a space where we can see outside, or living in a space where we can connect easily with that outdoor environment with our mental health. There's a really cool project about an elementary school in Washington State, I believe, where when it rains, water flows down and you can see the water flowing down. They also use that water for flushing toilets. And then they can hear that water flowing down when it's raining. So sound and watching water and watching it move, we have a connectivity. I was just at the lake yesterday, made me feel way better, right? After looking at computers all day. And again, we have this affinity with water, and can we design it into our, either the sound of it or you name it. Also mystery, a sense of mystery, right? Having things where you can't quite see everything and you're just kind of guessing what's around that corner, what's coming up next. Actually not knowing is, from what I understand, an opportunity to improve mental health. Are there ways to design mystery into projects and do that? So also on mental health, and I literally just got this study like the other day, is we're starting to understand that particulate, PM2.5, wildfire or gas cooking pollution is directly linked to depression in some ways, and there's trying to understand that. So I've got some links in there in the resource where you can take a look. So again, reducing those pollution potentially could help somebody with depression or reducing depression. Can't say it'll solve it. I'm not making any statements there. I'm just saying there are links between wildfire smoke, gas cooking smoke, and potential depression. And we're just now starting to understand that. One question we asked with all of our projects, and I'll let you answer the question, but the question is a home or building green if it's not accessible to everybody? And by accessible, I mean there are people with all sorts of challenges in life, whether they're visual challenges, whether they're mobility challenges, you name it. If a home isn't designed to help everybody, and are there ways to design homes to help everybody is my question, then is it green? I don't know. I'm starting to wonder. And so what can we do to design our homes better? This is Rosemary Rossetti, and she lives in a LEED certified home in Ohio, where she took us on a tour of her house, and she's got a whole Google tour of it, and talks about some of her products that she uses, everyday products. And this is an older presentation, but you should check her out because just a lot of great ideas on how to make homes more accessible to people. This is our member, Jake, with R Value Homes, who does a lot of GreenStar certified projects. And you can just see, if we back out here, a lot of his homes, when you come up to the home, it is 0 step, right? And so you can just see here that you can immediately, roll up into the house, come into the house. These are all wider hallways, if you will. And so this is, this is a way to, get around a house and build that's just built into his process. It's not even, it's not even a question anymore. And, if you actually go into the home, which I forgot how to do again on these Matterport tours, but yeah, here we go. If you go into the home, you'll just see again, when you're walking in, you go in and it's all just totally accessible, and all these, if you had a measurement, all these hallways are wide enough for anyone to get through. And I can tell you that you don't have to think of someone with a disability. Think of children. They can easily fall downstairs. Think of someone who break their foot. I can tell you that I know from personal experience, not my experience, but that all of a sudden 5 steps that takes a second to walk up, no thought. If someone breaks their foot, that 5-second walk up has now become a half an hour challenge, right? Think about it. Why do we put stairs in our homes anymore? It makes no sense to me. Just get rid of the stairs if you want to start somewhere, or find a way to design them out in your renovation projects. It is a danger. Stairs are a huge danger. They're tripping, falling hazards. They should be immediately removed, in my opinion. And again, this is what some of our builders, our members are doing. They're just like, this is no question. Just get rid of it, and it's not a problem. And I've got the durability logo up here, the materials one, which I don't think we'll get to on this session. But this is important because if you don't do this now, then every home eventually is going to need to be renovated and gutted out and fixed for accessibility challenges. And so if you design it right now, you will save materials and embodied carbon, which we'll get into, by not having to have it be fixed if a problem occurs or it changes owners and it needs to be renovated. So this is a great way to think to the future. What's going to be in the future? What are the needs of people going to be as we have aging populations, especially here in Michigan? What can we do to design out these problems and not have to come back in and renovate the house and use more materials and put off more carbon to the atmosphere from embodied carbon? So like I said, health goes beyond air quality. What other things did I miss in regards to health that you use, or what other questions do you have for me? Yeah, you just want to make sure that there is no smoking at all in these multifamily properties, which can cause all sorts of, we all know the problems it causes, right? It's no doubt. And then when smoking is coupled with radon, it's a double whammy for lung cancer. So certainly you don't want to be having that happen. And I don't know if smoking gives off PM 2.5. I imagine it does, but I think that's a good question I'd have to look into that. So materials kind of covers three basic areas when we talk about materials. The first one is we're looking at durability of our buildings and making them last essentially forever. There are homes that have been around for 1,000 years, if not longer, buildings that have been around for a long time. We're looking at what goes into the materials and where the materials came from and where they're going. And then we're looking at construction waste management and avoiding construction waste altogether, if possible. Those are sort of the three key areas. So we're going to get into the first one now. So again, we're trying to stop rain and water from the second that it hits the building to when it leaves, to just get it out, right? Like just get it out. And it seems like such a simple concept that's probably, required legally by code, but unfortunately it's not practiced, evenly. And especially in renovations, we see it ignored a lot. And so, think about health and energy savings. What does health and energy savings mean? If you've got a home that's rotting and falling apart, you've got mold, mildew, and what good is it, right? It's not a safe space. So it's very important to consider this and think it through deeply. So a lot of times what this means is using things like flashing on our roofing and designing our roofing appropriately. I live in a house where the designer didn't do that. And so water is flowing off in the wrong thing, and it's causing some mildew buildup, and it's causing rain to fall in certain areas, and it's rotting the siding, and it's a mess, right? So that needs to be repaired. So we see that happen a lot from a design standpoint, from a flashing standpoint. One strategy might be to use is metal roofing, right? And so there's a lot of benefits here: energy efficiency, reflectivity. We talked about that in the energy section. From a place standpoint, asphalt shingle roofs give off heavy metal toxins that go into the ground. From a water standpoint, if you've got food grade metal roofs, you can catch that water and use it for drinking or gardening or flushing toilets or you name it. So there's a lot of multi benefits for that. Looking at older homes with chimneys penetrating the roof, right? We look for that. And inevitably, the flashing is going to fail. I can tell you that on these chimneys, and there's going to be water penetrating into the roof. This is also a heat stack, right? Heat's just getting sucked right out this thing, right? And it's also giving you a hint that it's a super old, inefficient water heater or furnace that's being used in this chimney. So it's a win-win-win for health, to get rid of that and vent it out the side or go all electric, and then to also cap this chimney, seal it off, or at least repair the flashing so you don't have any damage. Gutters, right? No brainer. Get gutters on all homes and then make sure that the water is flowing away from the house. And then you might want to put leaf blockers in the gutters just to make sure, because that's going to be a maintenance issue, especially depending on how high up you need to go for the gutters. So here again, more resources from our friends over at Building America. We've got a lot of links for you there, looking at just proper flashing details and drainage plane details. We're not going to get into that. We have other sessions on that. We're going to do more sessions on it, but just making sure you get the wall detailing right, depending on what your system is in both new or existing homes. Making sure you got the window flashing right. This is a good reason to put new windows in an existing home if you've got water issues, and then making sure, again, you're getting the flashing and sealing details right. And there's all sorts of strategies to do that. There's trainings to do that. So make sure it's getting done properly and done right. And we talked a lot about existing housing and the idea of insulating the walls, but that could also cause moisture and mold issues and humidity issues. And so again, you just want to make sure that you've got the right proper water management systems in place if you're going to insulate these older homes, or you might just want to consider doing exterior insulation instead of cavity infill. This is pretty cool. This is that same GreenStar Gold home tour that we talked about. And so if you go a little bit further than what we were talking about during the ventilation section, and you can follow Ted outside, he's talks about using something called bentonite clay to help seal existing housing underneath the slab where it might be difficult to dig up or expensive. And again, stopping that water penetration from getting into these older homes. And so that's something cool that he talks about within that session. So I have a link there for you on that. And then also keeping the grading, right? Regrade all housing away from the house. And there are proper grading levels. You can check that out on LEED or Energy Star, water management, but just making sure, first, we're going to be looking at the plans and the specifications and looking at that grading, and then in the field, measuring that grading. And again, just making sure that it's going away from the house. If you don't have gutters, you can do an engineering report for some of the green certification programs and look for well draining sandy soils. So if someone lives in an area where it just drains really well through sand and you have an engineering sample to verify that, great, maybe then gutters just don't make sense. So if you know of certain areas you're building in and you have those engineering reports, you can get you can confirm that and then rule out the gutters, or just know that you've got that in place as well, and you can use it as a selling point if you're selling a house. Capillary breaks, which have a connection to radon beneath the slab, they're connected and keeping water out as well. Footing drain pipes, again, just all sorts of resources here from our friends at Building America to help you take a look at that. French drains. So if you have issues where you can't do the appropriate grading, you can make sure that the water flows into a French drain and then is moved out to the storm system to help get that water out of there. And I see French drains run in between tight lots and homes and all that. If you got the gutters in place and you can catch rainwater and store it in some capacity, this can be helpful and potentially even reuse this rainwater for landscaping, right? So I've got the site thing there. Use it for, or put it into rain gardens, which can help the natural world as well. Or if you're, again, using this water and collecting it for rainwater catchment, that rainwater can be a healthier option than ground or city water, which again, we're going to talk about rainwater catchment in the next session in the water series. But this is a win-win-win, 3 wins, materials, when you're capturing that water, directing it away from the house, and then using it for potentially drinking purposes or landscaping or you name it. So sump pumps, you want to make sure these are sealed up tight and gasketed to stop moisture and radon. So we have the health logo there, radon from leaking up into the house, very important. And one thing that's really important to look at is vapor, permeability, and vapor retarders. And there's a lot of conversation in the building science community and a lot of unknowns still. There's so much going on with vapor barrier, and do we need them? How should we let vapor flow? Should all of our wall systems be permeable and just let water move and not get trapped? These are all great questions, and we have an awesome dialogue with our friend Dan and Randy on this recent session we just did on vapor barriers. And I still think there's a lot of conversation to be had about this, and so we hope you'll join into that conversation, as well. You want to make sure that you, on all of your entrances to the house, in your wet areas, kitchens, bathrooms, laundry rooms, that you have some sort of substrate that is not carpeting. That's just a no-brainer, but we still see it happen all the time, especially on existing housing. So get rid of that so you don't cause mold or mildew or rot. For behind the shower and tub surround, we want to see, there's 2 different things we want to see. We either want to see on your left there, we want to see the single fiberglass insert shower and tub surround without any wall behind it. Or on the right there, we want to see a certified ASTM D3273 non-paper face backer. It could be a cement board backer, could be some other kind of fire rated backer, one or the other. We want to see that to prevent moisture buildup. So when you're doing bathroom renovations or new construction, this is something you got to get in there, especially for a majority of all the green certification programs that can help from moisture building up. Next, you can see examples at the bottom here. These are drain pans. So anytime you have clothes washers and water heaters in or above living space, you want to make sure that you have those drain pans installed. Very important to help catch water when it inevitably leaks, and make sure it drains out as well. But on the washer side, I will say that you probably can get away with something much cheaper, and that is steel braided hoses. These are, you almost have to go out of your way now not to get them. But instead of using the rubber hoses, which fail and break and leak, put in the steel braided hose, and it's much cheaper than doing the drain pan and can get you by in LEED and some of the other green programs. And it's just a best practice to make sure you ask for that steel braided hose in the washer system. Dryer venting, again, you're going to cause mold and moisture issues, pest issues, potentially fire issues if you don't properly vent the dryer. But so you don't want to have a dryer venting like this, right? You want to have a straight up hard duct going out and venting out, and you want it venting nowhere near other air quality intakes, ventilation intakes, right? They need to be 10 feet away. But what's another solution here that also is much more energy efficient? Can anyone take a guess on what that might be? Ventless dryers, heat pump, or condensing. Then you don't have this thing to deal with. It just goes down the drain, and it's much more energy efficient, especially the heat pump ones, and you don't have the pest entry, and you don't have the headaches to deal with. So I'd recommend, going down that route. And even then, when you install these, they fall apart in the future. And so, work with your clients to talk them into ventless condensing, heat pump dryers, if you can do that. So that brings us to the end of the durability section of materials. We have two other sections to go through, which we're going to get into the next course. Are there any other thoughts or questions you have for me before we close out on this one? What they did is they have all these stones. They have these stones around the house, and underneath is a catchment gutter, like underground gutter area, and then it drains off to, in their case, the rain garden, but it could drain off anywhere. And we've been seeing some more of that. It's less maintenance, not ugly. So there are other strategies, and Aaron brought up some ones here too, so I appreciate that, that we can use. The important thing is that we just got to make sure, and especially in the older existing housing where we just don't have the capacity to dig up ground all over and slope the house away, you're not in a well-draining soil situation, gutters really properly designed and maintained are in many only hope against the curse we have here is the Michigan basement, where it's all wet and moldy. It's one way to help alleviate that issue. But otherwise, we're going to conclude this session, and then the next one we're going to continue and wrap up materials and start water next time. And we're going to dive into what materials are made out of, where they're coming from, where they're going, and how we have all these choices we have to make when we're looking at materials, from energy, health, and other features as far as cost, right? We have to look at all these things and make informed decisions. So thank you all for joining us here at this session. We're going to wrap up now, and take care, stay safe out there, and be well. Thank you.